The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and desperation. Emma stood frozen outside room 304, her phone clutched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Inside that room, her 8-year-old daughter Lily lay sleeping, tubes and wires connecting her small body to machines that beeped with mechanical indifference. The doctor's words from an hour ago still echoed in her mind: without the surgery, she has 3 months. Maybe 4. But our policy requires a legal guardian who's married or has a domestic partner to sign off on the experimental treatment. Insurance regulations. I'm sorry. Emma had wanted to scream. She had wanted to tear down the walls of this sterile building that measured a child's life in policy clauses and checkbox requirements. Instead, she had nodded, walked out, and now stood paralyzed, watching her daughter through the window. 29 years old, single mother, working 2 jobs, and now this, an impossible deadline wrapped in bureaucratic cruelty. She didn't remember walking to the hospital cafeteria. She didn't remember sitting down at the corner table, her cold coffee untouched. What she did remember was the moment she looked up and met the eyes of the man sitting across from her, a complete stranger with kind eyes and worn hands wrapped around his own forgotten cup of coffee. "I need a husband by tomorrow," she said. The words tumbled out before her brain could catch up, raw and absurd and desperate. The man, mid-30s, with graying temples and the exhausted look of someone who'd spent too many nights in hospital chairs, didn't laugh. He didn't look away. He simply tilted his head and asked, "So you'll live at my place?" Emma blinked. "What? If we're getting married for some legal reason," he said calmly, as if discussing the weather, "the authorities might check. We'd need to make it look real. So I'm asking, would you be willing to live at my place? It's small, but it's clean." She stared at him, wondering if exhaustion had finally broken her mind. "I don't even know you." "Daniel Morrison," he extended his hand. "Single dad. My son's upstairs, room 412. Leukemia. He's stable now, thank God, but we've been here on and off for 18 months. I know that look you're wearing. I've worn it myself." Emma's throat tightened. She shook his hand mechanically. "Emma Clark. My daughter Lily needs experimental surgery. They won't approve it without a married guardian. Something about enhanced medical consent laws and insurance liability. I don't understand the details. I just know I have until tomorrow to figure it out or lose the chance to save her life." Daniel was quiet for a moment, his thumb rubbing circles on the side of his coffee cup. "My son almost died last year," he said finally. "There was a treatment option, but I couldn't afford it. A nurse, someone I'd never met, she loaned me $15,000. Just like that," she said, "pay it forward when you can. I've never forgotten that. I can't ask you to." "You didn't ask. I offered." Daniel pulled out his phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. "I'm looking at courthouse hours. We can get a marriage license first thing in the morning. There's a judge who does emergency civil ceremonies. I've seen it happen for other families dealing with medical situations." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Why would you do this? You don't know me. I could be anyone." "You're a mother trying to save her daughter," Daniel said simply. "That's all I need to know. And honestly, my son Jake keeps telling me I need to stop being alone. He's 11 and already playing matchmaker. This would give him something to smile about." "This is insane," Emma whispered. "Probably," Daniel agreed. "But these places," he gestured around the cafeteria, encompassing the entire hospital, "they make us do insane things. They create impossible situations and expect desperate people to navigate systems designed by those who've never had to choose between bankruptcy and burying a child." The next 12 hours blurred together. Daniel drove Emma home to pack a bag, essentials for her and Lily. His apartment was modest, tucked above a small bookstore in a quiet neighborhood. The walls were covered with crayon drawings, photos of a smiling boy with a baseball cap covering his bald head, and sticky notes with encouraging messages written in a child's handwriting. "Jake's artwork," Daniel explained, noticing her gaze. "He decorated while he was too sick to go outside. Said he was making the place beautiful for when he got better." That night, Emma couldn't sleep on Daniel's worn but comfortable couch. She kept thinking about the strangeness of it all, this man who had turned his life sideways for a stranger. At 2 a.m., she found him in the kitchen, assembling sandwiches. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "I'm making hospital food. Real food, I mean." The cafeteria will charge you $8 for something that tastes like cardboard. I usually bring meals for Jake and whatever family looks like they need one. You do this often. Often enough. When you're living in a children's hospital, you become part of an unspoken community. We all understand things others can't. We see each other's pain. Sometimes kindness is the only currency that matters. They talked until dawn, about their children, their fears, their exhausted hopes. Emma learned that Daniel had lost his wife to cancer 3 years ago, that he'd put his career as a mechanical engineer on hold to care for Jake full-time. Daniel learned that Emma had been disowned by her family when she became pregnant at 20, that Lily's father had disappeared before she was born, that every day was a careful calculation of which bills could wait another week. At 8:47 a.m., they stood before Judge Patricia Chen, two strangers about to become legally bound. The ceremony took 4 minutes. Judge Chen, who Daniel had called the night before to explain the situation, didn't ask questions. She'd seen these medical marriages before, desperate solutions to a healthcare system that too often failed the people it was meant to protect. By the power vested in me, Judge Chen concluded, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Emma felt the paper-thin gold band Daniel had purchased that morning slide onto her finger. It was too large, but it was there. By noon, the paperwork was filed at the hospital. By 2 p.m., the approval came through. By 4 p.m., Lily was being prepped for surgery, still groggy but managing a confused smile when she saw her mother wearing a wedding ring. Mommy, did you get married? I did, sweetheart. Do I get a daddy now? Emma's voice cracked. We'll talk about it after you're better, okay? Just focus on being strong. Lily's surgery lasted 7 hours. Emma paced the waiting room while Daniel sat quietly, occasionally bringing her water or a sandwich she couldn't eat. At one point, Jake came down in his wheelchair, IV pole attached, to meet his new family. Dad says you have a daughter my age, Jake said shyly. A little younger. 8. She loves baseball. Jake's eyes lit up. I can teach her to throw a curveball when she's better. Dad taught me before I got sick. I'm almost good enough to throw one again. When the surgeon finally emerged, exhaustion evident in every line of her face, Emma couldn't breathe. The surgery was successful. The tumor was more complicated than imaging suggested, but we got clear margins. She'll need intensive follow-up, but Emma, your daughter is going to make it. Emma collapsed, just folded onto the floor, sobbing into her hands. She felt Daniel's arms around her, steady and sure, and then Jake's small hand patting her shoulder. See, Jake whispered. Told Dad he needed to help somebody. Good things happen when you do good things. 3 months later, Emma was still living in Daniel's apartment. The marriage that was supposed to be paperwork had evolved into something neither of them had expected. They weren't in love, not yet, anyway, but they'd become a family. Emma had started working at the bookstore downstairs, where the owner had been understanding about her need for flexible hours for Lily's treatments. Daniel had returned to part-time engineering work, finally able to balance Jake's care with something for himself. The children had become inseparable. Lily's hair was growing back in soft curls. Jake was in remission, his color returning week by week. They did homework together at the kitchen table, argued over whose turn it was to pick the movie, and left sticky fingerprints on every surface. On a quiet Tuesday evening, as Emma and Daniel sat on the small balcony watching the kids play cards inside, Emma finally spoke the question that had been growing in her heart. When Lily's fully recovered and your insurance situation is stable, do you want to annul this? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Do you? I asked first. He smiled, that gentle smile she'd come to recognize as his thinking expression. Jake asked me yesterday if we could keep you and Lily forever. Said our family felt right now. Complete. Emma's breath caught. What did you tell him? I told him that depended on whether Emma wanted to stay. Whether this thing that started as desperation might become something real. She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally now, familiar. I think, she said slowly, it already is real. We skipped all the traditional steps, the dating, the falling in love, the proposal. We started with a vow and worked backward. But Daniel, somewhere between the courthouse and right now, I realized something. What's that? I'd marry you again. Tomorrow. Next week. Every day. Not for insurance or medical consent or any practical reason. I'd marry you because you're the most genuinely good person I've ever met. Because you saw someone drowning and jumped in without hesitation. Because you've shown me what partnership really means. Daniel turned to face her fully. I need to tell you something. That first day in the cafeteria. When you said you needed a husband. I was there because I'd just received news that Jake's treatment might not have worked. I was sitting there trying to figure out how to keep going. And then you appeared and gave me a reason, someone to help, a purpose beyond my own fear. You saved me as much as I helped you. Inside the apartment, they heard Lily shriek with laughter as Jake did something probably involving excessive amounts of flour in what was supposed to be cookie dough. Their family, unconventional, unexpected, and absolutely perfect. So what now? Emma asked. Daniel squeezed her hand. Now we keep going. Together. Isn't that what families do? And there, on a balcony above a bookstore, with two children who'd survived the impossible playing inside, two strangers turned spouses decided to transform their marriage of necessity into a marriage of choice, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest act of human kindness.